Hey guys, happy Monday. It's me, Miss Carter. And today we are going to get our interactive notebook set up and get some stuff put in it, take a few notes on just some simple 1-2-step equations, and give you guys some practice problems with that. So I want to make sure that you set your notebook up the right way and that we're all doing the same thing. So the biggest thing with the notebooks, and I talked about this on the first day in your syllabus, is that your notebook should look exactly like my notebook. And it's important to have a notebook so that you have somewhere that your math instructions and examples are always going to be. So I just have a 1-subject notebook. I usually, when I get a 3-subject, I never use all the pages. So again, it's up to you. But I am going to turn the camera down to my notes now at this time and let you guys see how all that needs to look, and we'll go through the notes together today. Okay, so when I first open up my notebook, the very first page is going to be my table of contents. I have left 2 empty pages for this, so this would be page 1, page 2, still for the table of contents, and then we'll start our notes on the 3rd actual page within the notebook, just to leave room in case you guys write big. But we will have a table of contents that has every page titled and in order. So if you're ever wondering, where was that page we took of notes on factoring, you can go back to your table of contents instead of looking through your whole notebook to find it. So today's notes, we're going to have inverse operations as our first page, multi-step equation vocab as our second page, and multi-step equation practice as our 3rd page. Here, let me get that closer for you. So again, that's inverse operations, multi-step equation vocab, multi-step equation practice. If you need to pause the video right now and write this down, feel free. At any time, if you need to pause the video because I'm writing faster than you, then please pause the video. So we're going to go to our first page of notes. Again, this is the 3rd physical page in the notebook, so we skipped 2 for the table of contents. So this page is titled Inverse Operations, and I have glued this in that I'm going to write in. It's also attached in today's assignment, so along with the video, anything that goes in our notes or that you're working on, the attachment will be here as well in Google Classroom. If you're unable to print and you don't have a way to get these pages printed, you can just write this in your notebook. So if you want to just write inverse operations, draw circles and arrows, you are more than welcome to just draw it in. As long as you have inverse operations on the first page, you'll be good to go. Okay, so inverse operations are simply operations in math that undo each other. So the inverse of something negates what it is. So if we look at addition, so we would just write addition in this little circle here. Addition, which you guys see as a plus sign in your math problems, the inverse of that is going to be subtraction. So we're just going to start real slow here, refreshing your memory on stuff that you guys already know. You already know inverse operations, so it's going to make these 1-2-step equations, multi-step equations real easy. So if I add 2 to something, if I want to undo that, I take 2 away. So the opposite of plus 2 is minus 2. Another inverse operation would be multiplication and division. So multiplication you may see as the dot or the X. So it just depends on how it's written. Or the number and the variable are side by side. So to undo multiplication, you would divide. So dividing undoes multiplication. So it may look like a fraction where you have something over something, or the divide symbol. So addition undoes subtraction, subtraction undoes addition,
Multiplication undoes division, division undoes multiplication, and the last one, this one seems to be the one that everyone loves to forget about. Anytime I ask, how do you undo a square, no one seems to remember. So square, if you have a number that's squared, in order to undo that, the inverse of that would be a square root. So just write square root. And that is this funny little symbol here. So 4 squared is 16. The square root of 16 is 4. So they just undo each other. So write those down. Again, if you need more time, feel free to pause the video, but I'm just going to write a little bit more in these boxes down here, and your page 1 will be done. So addition, what does it look like? That seems like a silly statement, right? It is a positive number by itself. Let's split that apart right there. Okay, addition, it's a positive number by itself. So you can have a variable plus a number, right? This is a positive number by itself being added to a variable. You can rewrite this way, 3 plus x, right? Because there's an invisible positive symbol here. We never write the positive symbols in front of numbers. A number by itself is assumed to be positive. It has to have a negative symbol in front of it in order for us to know that it's negative. Otherwise, if you don't see anything in front of that number, it's positive. So subtraction. It's going to go in the second box. It is a term or number with a negative sign in front. So like I just said, anytime a number is negative, you will know that it's negative because you will physically see the negative symbol. So x minus 3 or negative 3 plus x. So even though this looks like addition, if you're adding a negative number, you're going to have to be moving in the negative direction. So just think of that as subtracting, right? If this x was 5, and I had 5 plus a negative amount, I've got to take that away, so I'm still subtracting. And the last one is multiplication. Okay, and multiplication is a number or variable side by side. Right, so you guys have seen stuff like this, where you have a letter and a number side by side. That means that that letter is a missing number, and because they are stuck together, it represents multiplication. They will be multiplied once you know what that number is. If you have multiple things to multiply by, you can put it in parentheses, right? So this can get distributed to the x and to the 2. So it's 8 times x and 8 times 2, since you don't know what that is yet. You can't combine these because you have no idea what they are. So multiplication can look like this, subtraction can look like this, and addition can look like this. Now, let's flip over and start page 2 of our notes, which is going to look at some vocab with our equations. Okay, for page 2, you're going to title it Multi-Step Equation Vocab. Okay, so I'm going to write an example of an equation up top and what the important vocab terms are in that equation. Okay, 5x plus 4 equals 24. In this equation here, there are multiple parts, and knowing what they're called is important. So when I'm talking about equations in the future, I don't want you to be lost as to what each part is. So a number in front of a letter, this would be the coefficient. So right here, this 5, I want you to draw an arrow somewhere on your paper pointing to the 5, and beside that arrow, I want you to write coefficient. And we're going to write the definition down lower on the paper. But it's a number that's in front of a variable. So anything that has co with it means with. A co-worker is someone that I work with. A coefficient is a number that's in front of a variable. And when they're side by side like this, it's representing multiplication. So this would be the coefficient. This x, I want you to draw an arrow to the x somewhere on your paper. Pointing to the x, leading away. Again, I don't care where you write these words off to the side, as long as they're labeled. This is your variable, right? And a variable is a letter that could be a specific number, but we just don't know it. This can be any letter we want, okay? So sometimes you'll see math problems where the letter that we're looking for isn't X, it's A or B or C or F or D or whatever. But a variable, which is just a letter, holds the place of a number we don't know yet. This by itself is just a constant, right? It's just a number completely by itself. So again, draw you an arrow somewhere pointing to that 4 and write constant. Okay, so those would be the parts of the equation. And then anything completely by itself on the other side of the equal sign would be your answer. Now, if this was over here with other variables and other coefficients and other parts, then you've got a lot of steps going on, and you can have coefficients and variables and constants on both sides. But in this equation, this is just our answer. So you have one missing variable. So underneath that, now that we can see where these are in the equation, we're going to physically write what each definition is. So I want you to write coefficient. And that is a number that is in front of a variable. A number that is in front of a variable. Again, if you need to pause the video because you write slower, please pause at any time. A variable is a letter that could be a specific number, but needs to be solved. In order to find out. And then our last term here is constant. And that's the easy one. A number value by itself. Right? So those are the parts of your equation and the definitions of each. So I'm going to give you one quick one-step equation and one quick two-step equation and show you the last page of your notes, which is your practice for the day. So one-step equation is exactly how it sounds. It's an equation where you have one step to get to the answer. So I'm going to scoot this up some. For example, 5k equals 35. Okay, in this equation, I have a coefficient, a variable, and my answer is over here. And I know that's my answer because it's the only thing over here on this equal sign. My letters are all on one side. I only have one letter, so I've got one thing missing. I need to get this by itself to know what it is. In all of your multi-step equations, the goal is to get the variable by itself. Get your letters completely alone. So when anything is stuck side by side, we talked earlier about that, and it represents multiplication. So if we think back, what's the inverse of multiplication? How do I undo this? How do I get this away? We have to divide it away, right? Division undoes multiplication. So we have to divide that away. Because anything multiplied by 5 is going to be 5 times bigger. But to get it back down to the original, we'd have to divide that back by 5. So if you had 2 eggs, and you multiplied those 2 eggs by 2, to get back down to what you originally had, you would have to divide that number by 2. So you're just looking at how you get back to the original. So what you do to one side, you must always do to the other. So this multiplication and division cancel out. You're only left with k, which is exactly what we wanted. And 35 divided by 5 is 7. If you were to plug this back into this equation, is 5 times 7 35? Yes. And so that's how you can double check your work, always by plugging your answers back in. And then another example, I'll just scoot back down here. I'm going to give you a 2-step equation. So this means there's going to be 2 steps that you have to do to get to the answer, not just one. Let's do a divided by 4 minus 10 equals negative 12. Okay, now what a lot of students do sometimes is they go ahead and get rid of this, right? But whatever you do to one thing, you have to do it to everything on all sides, right? So if I were to multiply this by 4, I have to multiply this by 4 and this by 4. And that's just a lot. It's a whole lot easier to find just simple addition and subtraction first and move that, right? The goal is to get your letter by itself. Here's my letter. So I have to do the inverse operation of everything else I see over here. I need this gone. The opposite of negative 10 is plus 10. The opposite of divided by 4 is times by 4. So let's do this first because it's easy. Let's just add 10 to both sides. That's really the simplest thing to do. Gets rid of that. Now we have a divided by 4 equals negative 2. Right? So if I'm negative 12, so imagine there's a number line here and I'm all the way down at negative 12. If this were 0, I'm all the way down at negative 12. Someone gave me 10, let's say dollars. I have negative $12 and someone gave me 10. Well, I can move back towards 0 10 spaces, but I'm not going to get all the way there. I was down 12. They didn't give me 12 to get back to 0. They only gave me 10. So negative 12 plus 10 is negative 2. And then the last thing you have to do is get rid of this divided by 4. And if we know the inverse of division, it's multiplication. So we will divide both sides by 4. This divided by 4 cancels that multiplied by 4. So we have a equals negative 2 times 4. Okay, so negative 2 4 times. Negative 8. Right? So this negative symbol has to come down. And again, just to refresh your memory, 2 negatives is a positive, 2 positives is a positive. But if they don't match, it's always negative. If one's negative and one's positive and they don't match up, your answer is negative. And you can think about it that way. If they don't match, that's not a good match. That's negative. It's always going to be negative. So that was a 2-step equation. And that's how you work out these problems when you're missing a variable. So your last page of notes, I'm going to flip over in just a second and explain your last page of notes. Okay, your last page of notes is called Multi-Step Equation Practice. And this is 12 practice problems that you glue into your notebook. And you can choose to either do the evens or the odds. So that's 6 problems that you have to do. I will do number 1 and number 2. So if you have evens, you'll have an example. If you have odds, you'll have an example. But that's it. That's your assignment for today is, well, technically 5 problems. So number 1, I have 6 equals a divided by 4 plus 2. So anytime you have just an addition or subtraction on one side, get rid of that first. It's always the easiest. Our goal is to get our letter by itself. So we have to get this stuff away. So I'm going to move that 2 over to this side using its inverse, the inverse of addition and subtraction. So now I have 6 minus 2, which is 4. 4 equals a divided by 4. To undo division, we have to do multiplication. And again, what you do to one side, you always do to the other. I'm sorry this keeps unfocusing. It's my hand. So that cancels that. 4 times 4 is 16. There. And you can plug that back in right here. What is 16 divided by 4? It's 4. And what is 4 plus 2? 6. Plug it back in and make sure that it works. Over here on this side, again, anytime you have addition or subtraction by itself, just go ahead and move that away from your variable. That's the easiest first step. So the opposite of negative 6 is positive 6. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. Now, I know it looks like, well, Miss Carter, this is an addition problem. We're adding. Why would I add? Sorry. Focusing. This looks like an addition. This looks like an addition problem. Why would I add? Remember what we talked about on page 1. A positive number is by itself. A negative number will have a symbol in front of it, and you've got to do the opposite of that number to undo that number. So I'm trying to get rid of that negative 6. So I would add 6, and that cancels out to 0. So now I have x divided by 4 equals 1, right? Negative 5 plus 6 is 1. If you're down in the whole 5 and someone gives you 6, you can come all the way back up to 0, and you still have an extra 1. So now we just have to get rid of this divided by 4, which means we multiply by 4 on both sides. This cancels that, and you have x equals 4. 1 times 4 is 4. Or 1 4 times is 4. So that's your notes and your assignment for today. If you have any questions about the notes that we did or the practice problems that you have to do for today, please feel free to email me at any point during the day today. I'm available from 8 to 4 for you guys to email me. Again, if you need a private Zoom, just email me 24 hours in advance and we can set one up. And don't forget, today is the day that I have tutoring. So it's Monday, and I am here at the school from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So if you're ever confused about what's been going on, feel free to come in on Monday, and we can go over it face to face together. That way you're set for the week and you're not as confused anymore. You can also come into tutoring if you just need help with the technology part of virtual learning. So if you're having trouble uploading things to Google Classroom, logging into Google Classroom, using Cam Scanner, or printing things or taking pictures of things, come on in and we can do it in person together. Sometimes just doing it together one time is enough for you to figure it out on your own later. So that is your assignment for today. You're not going to be able to get to it and understand it if you didn't watch this video. So make sure that you're watching the videos daily. Please and thank you. Good luck today. Again, everything is due by Sunday at midnight for your grades. You need to at least attempt this and submit it for your attendance for today. If you have any questions, I'm always here, and I will see you guys tomorrow.